Hey, welcome back to Evergreen Spotlight. I am your host, Julie Holiday, and we have a special treat for you. Love is in the air, and so is the excitement of planning weddings. Today, we are joined by the fabulous Leah Haslage, the host of the Bridechilla podcast. Her show encourages brides to enjoy the planning process and to just chill. So whether you're planning a wedding or an event, or you just need to learn a few more tips on how to just take a couple deep breaths, you are in for a fabulous conversation. We are so excited to have Leah. We've been talking ridiculous amounts, even off camera, but we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us for Spotlight.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
great to see you again.
I know. So it's not often, that I can ask this question, but when we were thinking about having you, I'm like, I want to know what it's like from your perspective, because you have a background so much in TV and your production, producing. What is it like to be a podcast host, like from your perspective?
What's nice about being a podcast host, because again, my background is in TV reporting, anchoring, live entertainment for sporting events. So I've kind of done various formats of hosting and that.
All of it, yeah.
With podcasting, there seems to be a more relaxation to it compared to having to be on and give the news and And sometimes even in hosting shows, there's a little bit on TV, there's a little more of a formality. But in podcasting, it's more just having that conversation.
Totally.
Right? Mm-hmm. I always tell guests, this is just like we're having coffee and cocktails. We're just two friends chatting it up, very relaxed. And I think that's why podcasts tend to resonate a lot, especially in the interview format style, resonate with listeners because it's like you're in the dining room or the living room. Like you're in that space with the people and you're just enjoying the conversation.
Oh, I love that.
And that's something I love because I love learning about people. I get educated by the guests that we have on, right? And so, that's the best thing to me about podcasting and what makes it different from everything else I've done in hosting.
So good. I love that, like the perspective of a conversation. I think I want to take that with me more, just to really like it. Just relax. It's just a relaxed.
It is at the end of the day, right? Like, sure, we have cameras on around us and people are going to be listening, but at the end of the day, it's you and me. It's like we're talking about whatever subject we're talking about, right? And I think that's the beauty of it.
I love it. Will you tell us how you came across Bridechilla? Like how that was like, it was almost like an inherited, really exciting.
Very exciting.
Podcast, yeah.
And a little intimidating because it's big shoes to fill, right?
For sure.
So for those not familiar, Bridechilla is the OG wedding planning podcast. It started in 2014 with Alicia, who is based out of Australia. There wasn't really a lot of podcasts or many at all in the wedding space. And so she really helped catapult that. And she also came with a no-nonsense, no bullshit way of doing it because it wasn't B2B. It's B2C and it's her people, right?
She's talking to the
she
brides.
wasn't a wedding pro, but she'd been through having a wedding. And like a lot of people that now have wedding podcasts and work in the space, it started off with them blogging about their own experience, right? And so her being so unfiltered and honest, I think is what truly had resonated with listeners and made it the #1 wedding podcast. She ended it during COVID in 2020, which is around the same time I started my first one, Weddings Unveiled with Leah.
Yeah.
And, and that was for a couple years. And then last year, 2024, Evergreen decided to bring it back from the dead. Bridechilla had been dormant for 4 years and decided to give it new life. And with my background, it was like a perfect match. And Alicia still has a part with the show. She's been on a handful of times. She's going to be on again coming up. And so it's nice because she had these couples before they were planning their wedding that are now married, or they're like her and I and divorced and in new relationships. So, now we have new couples. There's, people are getting married all the time. And so, and the wedding industry changes all the time. So a lot of her advice back in the day is evergreen, pun intended. There's still some things that aren't relevant as much anymore. Trends change constantly. It's no different than pop culture and entertainment and everything else, media, right? So it's nice to get fresh takes and help couples and what's new and changing in the industry.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And with the name, like Bridechilla, like it really encompasses that, like, you don't need to be that Zilla. Like you just chill. You can have a very calm, relaxed approach, which I did my best in my wedding.
It's easy to get sucked in.
Yeah.
It is. Too. I had a meltdown 6 months in, and I was like, I have to get a planner. I have to get like a month out day of coordinator.
Oh, wow.
I thought I could just do it all myself.
And did you end up doing that?
Yeah, and they were a lifesaver.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And knowing like what your limits are. knowing what I think going back, I would probably have a little bit more limits on like, I'm going to just design my dress. Like, I didn't really have to do that. I kind of have a little bit of like, I could have let go.
You're talking about this DIYing.
Yes.
It's easy to do because she's like, I could just save all this money. But some people you got lucky. It doesn't sound like you end up having to like waste, quote unquote, a lot of money because you were able to do what you set out to do. Yeah. But there are a lot of couples that don't have that. They get really adventurous with their DIYing and they end up spending and wasting so much money that they could have saved by having just bought the item or hiring a professional. Right. And that's the delicate balance. You have to know yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, I like way overdid it on the favors. Like if it was on sale and in the bridal department, like I got it. And I think like that was one thing that I would do differently for sure.
Did your favors go to waste? Did people take them?
I don't even think I actually had I had bought like little boxes to put favors in, and I never got around to putting the boxes together.
Oh, okay.
Because it's also the laborious tasks and the laborious favors. I think those will constantly get pushed to the side because you need your flowers, you need your photographer, you need I think thinking about what it is that's really important.
Absolutely.
I got the advice, and I'm curious what you would say, to pick the top 3 things that are important to you about the day or about the event. Like maybe like to our listener who's getting married or, planning an event, like what do you think would be the most important?
So this is kind of a twofold answer because there's your top 3 vendors. Top 3 things that are most important to you. And then there's the top 3 aspects of your wedding. Sure.
Right? Yeah, you could break it down to that for sure.
So when it comes to vendors, you have to think, what's super important to you? So for me personally, it's always photography and videography, which videography is the number one regard of couples that get married that didn't hire.
And I had such a good one. I'm so grateful. That was one of my values. I'm like, I know that I'm going to want this footage. Yeah. Like, and I've talked to brides and neighbors or friends that something happened with the footage, or they don't have like those pictures and stuff, and it was bad. So continue.
Yeah,
please.
No, to me that's a top one. As to your venue, because that's the space you're going to be spending so much time in to celebrate, right? Sure. And then the third one. It's really just a personal thing. Some people really want the best food, or they want the best DJ, or they want entertainment. They want to, hire like the local sports team mascot, to surprise their significant other. Band. Yeah. Those type of things. So that really gets to be what you as a couple find to be the most important, because this is your budget, right? Yeah. And then the other aspect is what's most important to you as far as family and friends being integrated. So like your guest count, which is also where your budget lies in. The more people, the more expensive. But like, do you want to do certain ceremonial things to honor them? Do you want, different traditions in that? Or do you want to make it super micro or super macro? Do you want it to be a destination? Do you want to celebrate those are the things that you have to also agree on. So there's vendors, and then there's like the feel, right? What's your vibe?
Yeah, the vibe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So with this, I feel my own train of thought just going like, oh my gosh, like so many different things. And so how do you bring that chill aspect in when your mind starts to do that, or all the things? Do you have any chill?
That's why we're here. So just turn us on. Hopefully we can help you chill out. Yeah. Take a deep breath. It's going to be fine. Boundaries. Set boundaries. Number 1, set boundaries with your family and your friends and your vendors. Maybe even your significant other if they're a Zilla, because there's groomzillas too.
Can you give us an example of setting a boundary, like with our family or with our soon-to-be spouse?
Okay, let's start with spouses. That's a great one. So let's start with spouses. I have friends that are getting married, and they decided to set this boundary with each other because it got to a point where they were talking weddings and planning every single day. And they still had like a year out to go. Yeah. And finally, one of the significant others said, you know what? Let's take a step back and wedding Wednesdays. Wednesdays,
love this.
Over, happy hour dinner. We'll spend a couple hours doing all the planning stuff, but then let's take a break these other days. Or then you ramp up as it's getting closer to the wedding. Now it's like 2-3 days, but the rest of the days, no wedding talk, unless it's something that has to be decided because of a vendor. Right. Take that step back, because you can get really down a rabbit hole and make your whole life about the wedding. And it's one special day. You have a whole relationship to work on, and that's the key part, right? So set that boundary with your spouse. With family and friends, this is where it can get tricky. If they're giving money, and they are going to want certain input on things. You have to set that boundary. Hey, I am so thankful and grateful that you would like to donate this amount of money and you're wanting to say. If you're wanting to invite X, Y, and Z and you're saying it's because you're paying, then you have to pay for those plates. But just know this is not what we prefer, but then you have to pay for these plates. Or thank you for this money towards our DJ. I know it's not the DJ you want, but this is who we want. If you don't feel that way, then can we allot this money to something else that we can agree upon?
Kind of being upfront, like about the accepting of the gift.
People are people pleasers, and they don't know how to speak up for themselves.
Yeah.
I understand.
I'm recovering.
I used to be. I'm a
recovering
recovering people pleasers. But it's not easy.
We meet every Wednesday.
You know, especially with Wedding Wednesday recovery.
We still do the happy hour.
Yes, you need it. Sometimes you need it. But self-care too, right? Like,
yes,
you learn to stop prioritizing yourself because you get so obsessed with like going down the Pinterest rabbit hole and looking at different things. And it's like
things you have to do and all that.
Go get that massage, go run, go whatever is your thing, go read a book, whatever makes you feel relaxed. Set a timer, set a reminder, whatever you need to do to make yourself take that time for yourself, because if not, you're going to get sucked in and then you're going to get bitchy and no one wants to be around you. No one wants it.
No one wants to come to your wedding.
No one wants a Zilla. They want a Chilla.
Yeah.
And it makes it better for you too in the long run.
Yeah. That you enjoyed the process,
yes.
you know?
Yes. Yeah. Too many people don't get to enjoy it because they're looking to rush through it or get so into it that you don't see the big picture. You don't see all the goodness from it.
Now, with that, so we are like just days away from Valentine's Day, and it's exciting. You know, love is in the air, but, you know, it brings to mind even other holidays of, you know, how can a couple that's looking forward to this really big day, all their attention, you know, maybe they haven't had that really good conversation of like only on Wednesday, but, you know, how can couples celebrate holidays that are romantic while they're planning a wedding? Like, it seems like it's just even more pressure. Do you have any like chill ideas?
Don't make it about the wedding. It's just make it another day of celebrating you as a couple. Like, talk about how you first met. Maybe talk about the engagement, but like, just make it about your love. Don't make it about the wedding is my biggest advice, because all the rest of the time, you're talking about the wedding. Yeah. And some people want to get married on Valentine's Day. And I think that's great.
What do you think about that? I would love to know.
I'm weird with holiday weddings. And there's actually an episode that's going to be coming out pretty soon with Michael and Lauren from the Vendor Table podcast. They're two amazing photographers from the East Coast. Name. And I asked them about, you know, from their perspective, holiday weddings. Because I saw a lot of Christmas and New Year's weddings this year downtown. A lot. Wow. Wherever I looked, there was
forever tied now to your wedding. Like that holiday is now forever.
Yeah. And we all agreed, like New Year's, if the vendors are cool with it, New Year's is like the only one that's kind of acceptable because like it is like a big celebration. Yeah. But all the other holidays, I don't know if your family and friends really want to be wasting their 4th of July or their Valentine's Day or like, and maybe they do, maybe it's like your thing, but it's just a tricky thing. And think about your family and friends. Like, think about who's coming. Do they want to be spending that holiday doing this? Like, I don't know. That's a tricky thing for me. Yeah. New Year's can be fun, but
I like that perspective a lot. So we were talking before, and I was saying like I had, you know, gotten so many different favors and a lot of them went unused. Is there anything else you would tell our brides that they could just cut away, that they don't have to worry about it? Like, is there something that they could do, like a mistake that they can avoid?
Yeah, favors is usually considered the number one biggest waste of money in weddings because no one takes them. Yeah. If they're edible, you have a better chance. I know a lot of couples that instead of doing favors, they'll get a photo booth because then the guests can take it with them. You get that. Definitely. It's just like an extra form of photography, but it's like a favor at the same time. So it's an alternative. And for what you spend on favors at the end, you might as well just get the photo booth, you know. I think waste of money is not budgeting properly ahead of time because people end up overspending because they're not considering taxes and fees and tips. And like, I always bring this up on Bridechilla, and I did on Weddings Unveiled. Stamps. People forget stamps cost money. And if you have a heavy invitation suite, it's going to cost even more because you got weight and the stamps. So little things like that add up, and people end up going over budget because they didn't plan it in the budget. Alterations is always forgotten, and it's one of the most important things. So things like that.
I love that. Thank you so much. I wish you were around a little bit more, like when I was planning.
Well, I made these mistakes myself, back in my past life when I was married. So I'm passing this knowledge on top of what the experts are bringing to the table, right? Like, I went through this. I don't want you to go through what I went through. I went way over budget because I did not know how to properly budget.
Well, I would love to kind of pivot just a little bit in the podcast world because, you've been doing podcasting for so long. You have so much knowledge there. And just curious of I could ask you 100 questions about podcasting and how you approach your show. But, what is really, what are you learning podcasting? Or are there different forms of approaching it now that are different from when you first started that you're okay, I can even be more chill about podcasting in general, that I don't have to have all of these things in place, Is there anything that you would say?
That's a really good question. I guess the first thing that comes to mind was when I started podcasting 5 years ago, we were in a studio and there was, a certain kind of equipment and format, but then the pandemic happened and you pivoted to online and we had to figure out what sites would work the best video and audio quality. And I think with that, learning how to pivot even faster and better. And now that we know what works and doesn't work, I think it makes it a lot easier when troubleshooting technical issues and bringing guests on. And I guess the more you're ingrained in what's going on, the more chill you can become because you kind of have been through it.
Right.
I think being virtual has been the biggest pivot, but I think it's made me the most now chill. Because it's just an easier setup than constantly having to,
in person too.
Yeah, they're both great and they both have their pros, right? Yeah. But yeah.
How far out do you schedule your content? Like your guests or your topics?
Yeah, with Bridechilla, we're recording this episode right now in January, and I already have guests booked up through April for episodes that are going to air in June. I'm 6 months out.
Clench my pearls.
And I have to stop booking right now so we can
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So does that just take a couple days where you're just okay, here's my calendar. I know for sure I'm going to have all these people. Or how do you get that far out?
Yeah, myself and co-producer Gray, Sienna Longfellow, we have a spreadsheet that is, big ups to Gray. Love Gray. Spreadsheet that's our lifeline. And they have been great about rearranging things because I'll be this is...
I've got to see the spreadsheet. I have kind of a lot. I'm how did you add that color? Or how did you do that tab?
It's a lot.
Okay.
Plus social media and everything on top of it. I think the trickiest part for me is just getting to keep up to do my research to get everything together for the episodes because there's so much going on. Plus I produce other shows on top of it.
Yeah, you do.
So there's a lot to juggle. But it's great. We have amazing guests coming on Chilla that I wish I could just record every single day and release every single day at this point.
So cool.
Like Oprah used to do. Because I just love it so much. And there's so many amazing people out there sharing so many great advice and personal stories. And yeah.
Well, let's do some rapid fire.
Love it.
Yes. Real quick rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Leah, what is your favorite wedding trend of the moment? I know it changes, but what's your current one?
It's dying out, but I'm all for disco balls. So I have disco balls in my room. I have a disco ball in my car. This is something I'm about to be 42. This is a 40-year thing for me. I used to have it above my bed in high school. I love disco balls, and seeing them in weddings just makes my heart so happy.
Okay, and you know what? And that's cute.
But I'm here for it.
No, but you know what? And then the couple years later or whatever, whenever you see a disco ball, it can it'll remind you of the day. So I love that. You've been giving us so much advice for brides, but do you have just your golden, if you had to have your yearbook picture and then your piece of advice underneath it, is there anything that you would say or a quote or a motto that you stand by?
I mean, it's easy just to say chill the F out.
I know,
because it's
right.
Bridechilla, but
but that's really hard.
I mean, that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Let's come back to it.
Sure, you got it. Dream guest for your podcast?
Vera Wang, Mindy Weiss, and Sharon Sachs, who are celebrity wedding planners. Colin Cowie, also these big time celebrity designers and wedding planners are all on my list. I had Haley Page on. That was a big one. Oh. That was a huge bucket list for me. And to get her on the show was amazing. And
wow.
she was everything I dreamt she would be and more.
Wow. What would you ask Vera Wang? do you think?
Vera?
Yeah.
Just about the start and like being the designer to really make the minimalism and the 90s like what it was. Like she catapulted it from what we just knew of in the 80s and prior, but she changed it. She changed the game completely.
And a minimalist elegance for sure. Yeah. Yes, I love that. Most memorable moment on your show?
Oh, there's a few, but I mean, to circle back to Haley, talking about everything she went through with the lawsuit with JLM and her advice for second time, brides and couples, and her saying
so
that
relatable.
It's not a second wedding, it's a wedding, and you're celebrating love and how lucky it is that you can have love more than once, right? So that's a big standout.
So good.
Every guest has had some standout pieces.
And you can like take those nuggets and then they just travel with you, and it comes up in your mind when you hear it.
Yep.
Is there anything that you want to just share that you like felt like also like, is there anything else that you're feeling?
I guess just enjoy the process, whether it's planning your wedding or starting a new career or getting in a new relationship, whatever it is you're going through right now in your journey, just take a moment, take a deep breath and just try to enjoy the moment, because you're only going to have this moment in the moment, right? It's about to be the past. So just take it all in because you're never going to have that again.
One of my mentors says, enjoy fishing and not like just getting a fish. Like, enjoy it.
I love that.
I do too.
Yeah.
That's what that reminds me of.
That's a great one because like fishing, you really,
you're probably not going to be getting.
You not get the fish.
Yeah.
But you got to enjoy that
the
day by the
fishing.
water. Yeah.
And it takes away that stress. I do too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julie.
We love you here.
Love you
You
too.
just host all the podcasts. That would be great.
I think I'm on track to do so.
Totally. Okay, if you haven't checked out Leah's show, Bridechilla, you absolutely have to. It's just awesome. And there's so many tips and so many things to just keep current, and then just to, kind of go about your planning chilling. Or if you're planning an event, you can approach it the exact same way.
Exactly.
So check out Bridechilla. It's on the Evergreen Network, and we will see you next time.